Hi everyone, this is Aaron, and before we get started, I wanted to let you know that SOLA Conference 2020 is coming soon on March 27th through 28th at Evergreen Baptist Church of SGV. The theme is Reconciled, and registration with early bird pricing is now open. Kim Kira, Watson Jones III, and Owen Lee will be speaking, and Jimmy Needham will be leading us in singing. Check out our conference page on the SOLA website, and I'll put that link in the show notes. Today's podcast guest is Soojin Park. She recently wrote a letter to my Complementarian brothers on SOLA Network, and in this episode we talk about her salvation testimony, her call to vocational ministry, being a student at Reformed Theological Seminary, and her role as the youth ministry director at Christ Central Presbyterian Church. Thanks for listening. Soojin Park. Soojin Park, right? Your last name is Park?
Yes, it is.
Thanks for doing this podcast with me.
Sure, no problem.
You're in Virginia. Yeah, we're in Virginia.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We're at a 3-hour time difference. And
We are.
Are you like native Virginian? Is that what they call them? Virginia person?
Yeah, Virginians, yes. No, I'm not. Actually, I was born in Korea. I came over to the States when I was about 8 years old. We lived in South Carolina for a few years. So my parents claim that I learned English with a Southern accent, but there's no proof of that. So
Right.
I deny it.
Yeah.
And then we moved up to Virginia, even though I guess Virginia is still the South. Northern Virginia is really different. So yeah, so I've been here for about wow, it's been a long time now. It's like 16 years now.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah. You're definitely assimilated, I guess. And
Yeah.
I don't know what a Virginian accent sounds like anyways, or like whatever your mom was saying, whatever accent you had. So I can't tell. Can you tell I'm from California?
No, not just by the way you're talking, no.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never know like what I sound like to other people. And you'd think that like by doing the podcast, I'd be able to hear what I sound like. But even then I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's just how I sound. That's what we sound like.
Oh yeah. Every time I hear myself recorded, I get really creeped out. I'm like,
Wait.
do I really sound like that?
Wait, when else do you hear yourself recorded?
At one of my old jobs, I used to have to host webinars, and then I'd listen to the recordings.
Yeah. Oh wait, your old job was a nonprofit, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah. So I kind of had a very twisty and turvy career path before I ended up doing ministry. So straight out of college, I ended up working at a small nonprofit in DC that served girl and women victims of human trafficking. That was kind of like my passion throughout college. I knew I wanted to go into it. So I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I ended up working as a consultant for the government for Department of Justice, doing support work for other big nonprofits that work with trafficking victims.
Wow. Okay, hold on. Before you move on, sorry. That sounds like a really like heavy job.
Yeah, I mean, so I learned a lot. I'm sure anyone who's listening who's ever worked at a nonprofit, especially a small nonprofit, knows that your job description is all of the above.
Right. Yeah.
So I definitely learned a lot, but yeah, it was definitely heavy. I interacted a lot with the girls who were there that we were helping, that we were servicing, and hearing their stories and getting to meet them in person. And even more than that, I think hearing directly from our social workers who are working with them in, day out. Yeah, I think it definitely takes some kind of a toll on you emotionally, spiritually, even. Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
Yeah, and then when I left that job, I had this, I call it my quarter life crisis, where
Really?
yeah, I bought a ticket to Asia and I flew out for a month.
Oh wow.
after I quit my job. Yeah.
That's not that bad. That's like a vacation.
Kind of. And then, I had this like total like quarter life crisis where I didn't know what I was gonna do. And then I came back and I knew that I always liked planning things. So I just decided, hey, I'm young, I might as well try. So I wanted to go into events and like conference planning. So that's kind of what I ended up doing. I ended up going to like a software company and planning large conferences for clients. And so that's what I did the last 2 years before I hopped into ministry.
Wow. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah, you're right. This is a crazy career path right here. Okay, I want to talk about the
Yeah.
quarter life crisis first. Like,
Yeah.
how did that hit you?
Well, so I think it was a mix of a lot of things. I think that last job I was in wasn't the best working environment. I think it was kind of a toxic working environment. And even there, I was working in the trafficking field. And, there's kind of this saying that people in the field, the turnover rate is so high, right? Especially those who are actually in the like doing field work. And I think it's because of that emotional toll that I talked about earlier. I think some of that hit me too, where I kind of came out of college like really like bright eyed, like I had that whole I'm gonna do something in the world, like make a difference, like. And I think part of just seeing the reality of things, like seeing that actually things are really unfair, things don't move as fast, or people don't care as much, or um, the world just isn't what you pictured it to be when you first left the bubbles of university at 21, right? Yeah, and so I think, like, learning to deal with that and learn, I guess, quote, unquote, "real world" through that definitely yeah, I guess I came out of it a little tired and weary, and especially mixed with the fact that, like, my job environment wasn't that great, I think I just came to a place where I said, "Oh, I just really need a break," or, "I need a break from this and try something new."
Yeah. Wow. And I guess you did. You did try something new.
Yeah, I definitely did, mhm.
The event planning. What happened there exactly?
Um, I mean, I loved it. It was really fun. The event planning is definitely a stressful job. Someone told me that it's up there in the most stressful jobs list along with dentists.
I am
And
not surprised.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely stressful, but I loved it. I think like I have that. I guess I have the personality for it, where I'm just yeah. They say you need to be a little crazy to enjoy it, so maybe I'm a little crazy.
Are you
But
controlling? Are you like a type A, like has to go this way, let's stay on
No, actually,
schedule?
the thing about an event planner or a conference planner is you have to be so organized when you're planning, but when it comes to the actual event, you have to be the most flexible and willing to let things happen as they
Yeah,
happen.
good point. Wow. Okay, from the event planning, I guess that's when you stopped and went to ministry at that point? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, and how did that occur?
Well, so, I knew since I left my college campus that eventually that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
So
knew you were gonna go into ministry somehow.
So I actually graduated university a year early, and then I stayed on campus to serve at my campus church. And even at that point, the thought of vocational ministry wasn't something I had in mind. But as I spent that year serving and really considering, okay, like after this year, what am I going to do? Very long story short, it became really clear to me that this was what I loved doing. And not only myself, but people around me were just confirming that the things that I love, but also, the ways that God has gifted me just really pointed me to this. And so, yeah, I spent that year really praying about it, considering talking to people, and just was a really clear conviction that in ministry, vocational ministry was something that I did want to pursue.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, God was really gracious to me too, and just even in through the conviction, I didn't feel the sense of like, okay, like I have to do this because this is the way God is leading me. But I think it really came with He was really showing me that this was something He's laying in my heart too. That when I was discipling or teaching, that I felt a lot of joy in that too. And so yeah, so just aligning my own desires with this conviction, I think was really God's way of just lovingly affirming this for me too.
Yeah, maybe more like a confirmation, I should say then, huh? Where
Yeah,
where you
yeah,
felt like maybe affirmed maybe to do it, I guess?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so I guess your current position is the youth ministry director at Christ Central
yes.
Presbyterian Church. Is that like when you went from event planning, did you go straight to this job?
No, so I ended up my first year. So okay, so I was kind of waiting for the right time or the right doors to open. I think one of the things that I was really waiting for was for myself to be really plugged into a church. I knew that I wanted to go into the next steps of ministry, being able to partner with a local church and having a local church support me. That was really important for me. Just a lot of things lined up, and I was at a point where I knew I wanted to take that next step. And so when I was starting seminary, I had approached our senior pastor, Pastor Owen Lee, just letting him know that this is what I want to pursue and that I would love to get more ministry, hands-on ministry experience and intern at our church.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually spent a year interning under our then youth and college pastor in both ministries, and then this position just happened to open up with some of the just kind of staff changes we were making internally, and so I ended up applying for the job, and that's how I ended up here.
Wow. How about your testimony then? I'm kind of curious then, because if your passion was, to go into ministry, or you kind of knew out of college that that's what you want to do, I kind of want to know, like, well, yeah, what's your testimony? Salvation testimony, I guess.
Man, this might take a long
Well, okay, you can give me the abridged version, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I come from like Christian home. My parents were both believers by the time that I was born. My grandpa was a pastor. We joke that we think that I'm a fifth generation Presbyterian coming from the
Awesome.
north. Yeah, so definitely, being born into the church had a huge part in me coming to faith. But I think the most pivotal point for me was college. So I was super involved in youth group. Definitely the seeds were being planted, and I had clear experiences with the Lord throughout youth group. But when I went to college, the campus church that I attended, the our pastor's wife had actually gone to seminary too, and she was doing like full on hands-on ministry, and she discipled the women, the young women in the
Oh.
campus church. And
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
yeah, I think she played a really pivotal role in my life. Um, I think she was, I didn't really grow up with like women doing ministry, especially in like a formal setting. And
Sure.
so,
Yeah, and we'll have to
and
talk about that, yeah.
yeah, and I think she was the first woman I had met who had a seminary degree. And so the fact that like she was discipling me, but she was giving me, just clear answers, clear and confident answers, always pointing me back to the word, really teaching me the importance of the word and how to ground my faith in the word. Like that really made a huge difference in my life. And so I think that's when I really began to take my faith seriously. I think, there were things from, my childhood and my past that I was really wrestling with. And she just helped me so clearly to deal with it in a biblical way and really take those things to the Lord. And so, yeah, I think those 4 years I had with her were just really, really important years. And I like undoubtedly she's the one who she had such influence in my life. Definitely seeing her made me realize that going to seminary and doing ministry was an option for me too.
Yeah. I mean, even apart from your article, I think it's just great that we have women discipling women and just kind of a legacy of that happening. Sounds like she was super impactful on your life and maybe even formative to you going into ministry and attending seminary and everything.
Oh yeah, and I actually have a handful of sisters from college who also are attending seminary or have been to seminary. And that's just rare, to have that many female friends who are pursuing theological education. So definitely her legacy is there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And was the youth minister before you, I guess, right? You said there was an opening, I guess,
Mhm.
male or female?
So so he was male. He's still at our church. So he was the youth and college pastor, but we shifted some things at our church where now he's the pastor of education who oversees all of the family ministries, so children at youth and college, and so they opened up the spot for a youth pastor slash youth director position.
I do want to talk more about your church, but really quickly, you're at Reformed Theological Seminary.
Yes.
Is that the default seminary that everybody wants to go to in Virginia? I'm not quite familiar with the scene over there.
Not necessarily, but I mean, I definitely knew I wanted to go to a reform seminary. So there's, pretty few options there. I have some friends, who make the drive over up to Westman and Philly, or who are doing like degrees online. But So RTS, they have campuses in multiple locations. So they have campuses in Orlando, Jackson,
Yeah, I think I
New
know
York.
the Orlando one actually. So maybe
Yeah,
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 it's affiliated then. Okay, I get it. I get it.
yeah. So same school, just different campuses. But for me, it was a no-brainer. It is a solid school with solid education. Got to meet some of the professors. Really enjoyed my time with them, and the fact that it was local and I could take all my classes in person. Like I knew that's where I wanted to go.
And okay, being a student there, you're not the only woman student there, but
Mhm.
I mean, what is it like for you?
Yeah, you know, I so this is my second year now, right? So I'm halfway into my second year, and I have to say, definitely feel more comfortable now than I did when I started.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, because I think it really depends on the class too. But there are some classes where it is a lot more women,
Mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
But there
mhm.
are some classes I've had classes where I'm the only woman.
Mm, 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 mm.
And I think especially in the beginning, that was really daunting. Yeah, and I think maybe and no, I don't think it's just me. I do think like this is a shared experience with a lot of people, but just growing up seeing that you don't really see like women doing formal ministry or going to seminary. You don't really read a lot from women and so I kind of grew up thinking that like this was a very male dominated space, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
it is to a large degree, but that and I think if I didn't see my college minister in the way that she did ministry and she did seminary, like I wouldn't even have known it was an option for me.
Yeah, and this is kinda messed up, but do people ask you like, "Oh, what are you like, what's your goal being here?" Like, as if, like, education isn't the goal, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I get asked that multiple times. I've gotten asked that several times, and I think particularly because so within our school, there's different options for degrees. So there's like the Masters of Biblical Studies, Master of Religion, and then there's the Master of Divinity, right? And so the MDiv is what most pastors get. It's a longer degree. It's twice as long as the other two degrees, and the question that I get most is not really what are you doing here? What's the end goal of being at seminary? But like, why are you getting an MDiv?
Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, so I wrestled with this too when I first was starting off, and it was actually my own pastors at church who really encouraged me to get the MDiv over the other degrees. And looking back, I'm so glad they encouraged me to do that because when you look at the course requirements for the full degree, so now I kind of have an answer for this because I've had to answer this so many times. Is
Yeah.
when you look at all the course requirements, yeah, there's the few that stick out. Like, there's the pastoral ministry class, and you're right. I'm not trying to be an ordained pastor, but for me to sit through that class and learn exactly what the goal of my own pastors is and how I can best support them as the staff at our church, like
Yeah,
that's so helpful.
yeah.
And, I think the biggest question comes from the preaching classes, right? Like
Okay,
people are
right,
always
right, right.
a little suspicious of that or like little suspicious of
Yeah,
why are
yeah.
you trying to get this degree where you have to take these classes. And, when people show that kind of attitude to me, I really try to give them the benefit of the doubt,
Oh, yeah,
right?
I mean, based
Um,
off your article, yeah, you're super gracious about all this stuff.
and and I mean that did not come easy for me, but I think just God has really humbled me to and really remember that as much as it wasn't natural for me, it's not natural for other people, because people haven't really seen other women get this degree and do ministry in that standard complementarian context.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
It I understand why people can ask those questions, but I always say like I think the actual like preaching courses, like even though I'm not going to be preaching, they're really teaching you how to communicate, right? And then how to teach. And I'm going to be teaching in other contexts, and I think that's important for me to learn.
Yeah, why don't you tell me a little bit about your job over there at Christ Central? What is your, yeah, what do you do exactly as the youth ministry director?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really the responsibilities that you would typically associate with your quote unquote like youth pastor, right? So whether it's planning, executing all our week to week youth meetings, retreats, all our events, A lot of my time is actually spent providing training and guidance to our small group leaders. We actually do family worship at our church, which means
Which
we
is
don't have a
awesome.
separate youth group worship.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
honestly, like I love that family worship atmosphere. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So we have family worship every week, which means the youth pastor or even myself as youth director, like we don't have to teach every Sunday, right? So what really happens is so everyone will go to worship together with their families, and then we have separate youth meeting afterwards where our primary time is spent, we have some bit of large group time together where sometimes I will teach on something. But most of the time it's spent in small groups where we go through Bible study. So we've been going through like books of the Bible at a time, kind of taking half a year to finish through. And a lot of my time and effort is spent on training and teaching our leaders so that they can teach.
Awesome. No,
Mhm.
that's a great thing. And how many students do you guys have at your church?
So middle and high school combined, we have about 80 to 90 students.
Oh wow, that's a good amount. That's
Hmm.
a good amount. And what's the ratio for counselor to student, I guess?
On our roster this year, we have 20 young adults who are serving as small group leaders. Yeah.
That sounds really good.
Yeah. Actually, last year we had even more. We had close to 30.
Oh wow. Wow. Okay, and okay, yeah, now let's get into the nitty-gritty. How are you recruiting these volunteers, these helpers?
um, I just think we have a really, really awesome group of young adults at our
Yeah, no,
church.
that's amazing.
Yeah. We have a huge population of 20s and 30s at our church, and I think they're just so willing and so able to serve and give their time. So thankful for them.
Okay, how many years have you been the youth ministry director? Sorry, I lost track.
No, no, I actually just started this job.
Oh, okay, so you just
Hmm.
started. And are
Hmm.
you still easing into it, I guess, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like youth ministry is never slow, so you just kind of jump into it, right? And I think it helps that because I interned with this same
Oh,
ministry for a
right, right, right,
year.
right.
Yeah. So like whether it's the students or the parents or a lot of the leaders, like I already had a relationship with them. And so I think that definitely helped.
Yeah, and okay, you said that Pastor Owen was a big influence on you, right? In going through with this. One of the questions I did ask you was, what does complementarianism look like at your church? And I guess that's one way it looks like, I guess, being supported.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I have really appreciated in terms of not just Pastor Owen, but all our pastors and our elders at our churches, they're just so clear with me from the beginning, right? So what I know is, Pastor Owen took our session. I think it was about 2 years ago, and they went through this whole study where they looked at, the PCA report on complementarianism. They looked at different books, and they really wrestled through and prayed through to determine what it is their stance, our church stance, is going to be on. And I really appreciate that they took the time to figure that out and pray through that and have just clear, I don't want to call them boundary markers, but clear kind of guidelines on, how our church is going to approach complementarianism. Then when it came to like my conversation with him from the beginning, I knew exactly what his expectations were, what the church's expectations were, and I never had to feel like, I'm kind of trying to figure things out or, walking a gray area or wondering if I'm doing something that I shouldn't be, right? Because I knew from the beginning it was clearly communicated to me. And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah. How about other roles at church where other women are doing things? Is there a
Yeah.
similar
Mhm.
position that somebody else has that I guess is at your church, I guess, too?
So our staff is split about half men and women right now. So we have our women's ministry director, our children's ministry director, communications director, and our admin director. They're all women at our church.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think you said kind of what does complementarian look like at your church, and one of the things that Pastor Owen has always just been so encouraging to me with is just really challenging me to flourish in ministry in all the ways that I can, right? And so, at our church, what complementarianism looks like is obviously the elders and ordained pastors are men, and ultimately we submit to them in terms of their authority in biblical teaching, discipline, and decision making. And preaching in a worship service and giving of sacraments, so baptism, communion. So those things are, reserved for elders and ordained pastors, right? But outside of those things, there's a lot of freedom for the women in our church to lead and teach. So we have women praying during Sunday services. We recently had our first female presider at our church. And, I kind of mentioned this earlier too, but as youth director, I don't only teach our youth students, but, I teach our adult volunteers so that they can teach. And, those are things that not only Pastor Owen, but the other pastors that I work with have been, just really encouraging me with, to grow in that, giving me more opportunities to teach when appropriate so that I can grow in that gift as well. And so I think overall, I've just been really thankful to be at my church where I do feel like I'm being really supported, um, not just verbally, but with just very tangible opportunities to do ministry.
Hmm. Honestly, it sounds like you're thriving. It sounds like you're doing amazing work over there. Do you find yourself encouraging other women? It sounds like the environment is already, positive. But do you personally find yourself, going out of your way or just kind of, taking notice where you can encourage women to serve more at your church?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I think that can come in explicit ways, but also implicitly. I know that having even me up there teaching, I know that's sending a message to our younger students or even our female leaders, that this isn't something they may be used to, but that's also a message that not only myself, but our church is sending them like, hey, like this is a place where you're welcome to lead and to thrive.
Awesome. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. In your article, you mentioned that you are now a complementarian. So I guess that means what was it like before and what caused that change?
um, yeah, I think prior to college, I just didn't have enough information, right, about what complementarianism is. And I think maybe this was just my experience, but I feel like a lot of people can experience this in immigrant churches too, growing up in immigrant churches where, like, I don't know if I saw the best like balanced ministry, right? Like, so I didn't really see like women doing ministry, and so I think I just like hadn't seen enough, hadn't been taught enough to really have an informed decision. And um, but again, like it kind of goes back to when I was in college. Our pastor and his wife, they taught explicitly complementarianism, but I think it made a huge difference that they were teaching it together.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And that I saw that, she didn't preach on Sundays, and, he was our pastor, but at the same time, she taught us with a lot of authority, and they clearly were partners in ministry. And for me, like, I think having to, being able to see that was really helpful. And seeing like, okay, like this is how complementarianism can be done.
Did that I'm assuming that happened over time then, right? Over the time when
Yeah.
you were working with them, when you were all together. Was there a moment where you actually straight up said, "I am a complementarian"? Like, are you like, you actually like put it into
Yeah.
words or you fleshed it out? You wrote an article about it? I don't know. Like, was there it's an aha
No,
moment,
no, no article. I think it was mixed. I think it was definitely gradual, like, the Lord was working in my heart in different ways, but there was kind of this aha moment where I was sitting in a seminar that they were doing together on just, like, biblical womanhood, biblical manhood, and God's design for gender. And it just kind of hit me that this design is a really good design. That what God made is good and it's beautiful, and that like when it's done right and when it's carried out right, like it is a really beautiful thing for me as a woman to say that like I can submit to and support and help, my future husband or my elders or pastors, and knowing that like that's not a demeaning thing, that's not a bad thing, right? But that it's like a wonderful and beautiful thing that God has created. Yeah, there was definitely that moment where that hit for me.
Yeah, and you said it beautifully. I mean, this is if this is really how God created it, right, which is what we believe to be true,
Hmm.
then yeah, it's good, and
Right.
it's an awesome thing. It's an amazing thing, and we should be doing our best to reflect that, to image that back.
Hmm.
Okay, one more about your article. what did you mean when you wrote about crossing the line and being an imposter?
Yeah, so I briefly touched on this earlier too, but even having made that decision, like, okay, I'm gonna go into this, I'm gonna go into seminary, and like knowing clearly that this is what I needed to be doing, I could not help but feel that this is still very much a space in a world that almost like belongs to men. Um, and again, like some of it was just my own perception. Some of it I think is reality. Um, but walking into it, I definitely kind of carry that on my shoulders, right? Like wondering, do the people in this room, are they okay with me being here, right? Or to what extent can I even speak out?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and okay, you said that finally after 2 years of seminary, you're starting to finally feel a little bit more comfortable, and this is you just started your position as the youth ministry director. Do you think
Mhm.
that there's a sense or there will ever be a day where you don't feel that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'm really thankful for my campus, just because it's really funny actually when that article came out. Some of the professors reached out to me. I don't know how they saw it, but they saw it on social media,
Nice, yeah,
and
nice.
I actually just got really good feedback, and I was able to have a really thoughtful and good conversation with some of them, and even our president. Just I feel like our professors are just really, really great, and none of them have ever made me feel that like I'm not welcome at that school. And they've all done such an amazing job of just. And I don't even think they need to be consciously doing it because they're just, it's like so ingrained in them where um, they just, they want everyone to be there and they want everyone to learn about the word of God. And I think in general, like I've met just really wonderful peers and other students too. So I'm really thankful. I don't think every seminary experience is like mine. So I'm really thankful because I feel like generally I have had a really positive experience so far.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, first off, that's really great that you can say so many good things about your seminary. The fact that the president talked to you about your article, I think that's great that the president knows who you are and what you're doing out there. Did you get called into his office? Was it like seeing the principal?
No. So I do like work study at our campus.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so I work with him a lot.
So he was just casually surfing on the internet. Oh, I know who that is. I know I can read this
I think
article.
it was on Facebook. He probably saw it like my pastor shared it.
Yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
yeah. Okay, and so when Hannah reached out to you, were you like hesitant at all to like maybe yeah, like really go public with your thoughts? I mean,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So,
you're still like
you know,
second guessing it. Like I don't know.
actually, I will say like she explained to you in that podcast episode, but I actually had written like this long personal response on Facebook before the article. And, like I've never considered myself a great writer. And I've just like never thought that that was my thing. And so I don't write a lot, but I think people would say I'm a pretty passionate person. And this was something I felt very passionately about. And I think what particularly drove me to write on it was I wasn't hearing any of the big voices talk about it. And I think that really upset me
Okay.
that this seemed to be an issue that, if it's not dealt with in a proper way, if it's not addressed, like this could have long term implications for how girls and women grow up in the church viewing themselves, but also how boys and men view women, like, um, I just felt like it was such an important thing, and it was just like it was a very hurtful thing, and it's with someone so public, and it was upsetting to me that I felt like there was definitely talk about it on the internet, but no one with like a prominent voice was speaking up. Um, so there was no one for me to be able to reshare, like retweet or
Yeah.
repost. I was like hoping that someone would write some great article on it. I could just share it. Um, and so I think partially that's why I just felt this need to write something, right? That like I'm just upset that, and I feel like I'm not finding anything that's really explaining the way, just like how I feel about it. Um, so I wrote it, and I think even when Hannah reached out to me, Pastor Owen had introduced us, and he texted me on the side, and he's like, "I really think you should do it," like, really encouraging me. I think actually jumping into it and writing it wasn't bad, but I do think, like, when it got posted that day, I had this moment of realizing that, wow, like, this kind of controversial thing is being posted on the internet with
Yeah.
my name on it.
It hit you at that moment, like, oh.
Yeah, yeah, and then I remember I was sitting in my staff room at church, and we just happened to have ended all like, our staff meeting, all the pastors and directors were there, and the post came up. Hannah had emailed me, and I remember telling them, "Yeah, like, I think the internet's a scary place, and I'm
It
almost
is.
wondering,
Yeah, it is a
like,
scary place.
yeah, like, if I should have not written this article."
Well, off the bat, I'm glad that you wrote it, okay? So, I'm not trying to make you say anything here, but, yeah, it was well written, and you were timely, and you were clear, and you were gracious. I think it was a great article. And,
Thank
you were
you.
bold. You were bold and courageous. Your name is on there, like, your face is on there, your bio
I
is on
know.
there. Yeah, I mean, putting yourself out there, I think for sometimes when those types of articles are pushed out, are written, I think it's good that it's not anonymous. I think it's good that we can see the person behind it, because like you said, it affected you personally. You're not just writing intellectually or academically, like there was feeling behind it, and while you did make like really good points, like biblically and practically, it's you, it's your experience too. And I think that's why I
Mhm.
appreciated the article, is because it was so unique, and because I could really see the personality behind it. And after talking to you, I can totally see that. Yeah, like I do feel God. It's like, yeah, you were the person to write this one.
Yeah, and what's been just really humbling and encouraging all at the same time is, I had no idea what to expect afterwards, after the article got posted, but just the feedback and the responses, people reached out to me that I don't even know. It's been incredible. And I think something that I've been reminded of is, I may have been the one to write these words, but that these sentiments and, even the words themselves, I think really just are not my own. What I've been realizing is, I think the reason why this resonated with so many people was because there were so many women who have been wanting to articulate this for a long time and have felt that, maybe they weren't sure if they could, right? Or if they were right in what they were thinking, or if they were the only ones. Whatever the reason is, I've just been hearing from a lot of people around me that, and other people that I don't even know, that this piece really hit home for them. That this is something that they have carried with them. And so, yeah, I just feel so humbled and so grateful that this opportunity was given to me, that I could speak, really not just for myself, but I really feel that for a lot of other people too.
I do feel that it's still going to keep reverberating. I don't think that this is the end of of the article life. Like it was the most popular one in November. I think probably when we look at the stats, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the most popular article of the year for us here at Sola. But yeah, thank you for writing it, and thanks for sharing it, and also talking a little bit more extensively on this podcast, Soojin. Do you have any words of encouragement, maybe for other writers that might want to write about something, or even maybe females that are doing ministry type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I would not consider myself a professional writer in any
You are
by any
now.
definition. And I think Hannah had mentioned this in the last podcast too, and I totally agree with her. And this is, I feel this for myself is, um, I think it's just best to be just clear and conversational, right? Like, I never thought myself a great writer because I feel like I have limited vocabulary, and I'm all about being concise, but sometimes I think that's the best way to do it, maybe. And then I think just for, do you say just other women or other women in
Yeah,
ministry
I
or?
mean, maybe women ministry, or even if you want to respond to the men that read your article, whatever. Yeah, last words that you want to throw out there since we're talking to you.
Yeah, for the sisters, I think if the article resonated with you and it's something that you've been carrying alone, I really hope that you'll be encouraged to know that you're not alone, and that there's plenty of other women out there who are wrestling through the same things. And If anything, I hope you'll be encouraged by the fact that, this article is getting picked up not because of who wrote it or because of the great writing, but just because it shows like there's that many people out there who feel the same way. Um, and especially I think if you are considering going into ministry, or you're like trying to go into ministry, it's not going to be easy. I know I've shared a lot of great things about even my own church experiences, love my pastors and the encouragement they give, but we've had our fair share of having to work through difficult conversations to get to where we are. And so I just want to put out encouragement that if you're going through that, or if you think you're going to go through it, to press on, to hold on to your your first convictions of why you're there, to know that like you may feel alone, but you're not alone. Yeah. And then I guess to the brother, um, mm, yeah, I think one thing I would say is like, give the sisters benefit of doubt.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Is that don't go into conversations assuming that their intent, or what they're carrying with them, or if you're wondering why they're getting an MDiv, don't walk into it suspicious. Give
Yeah.
them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
um yeah.
That's really good. Man, thank you so much, Soojin, for doing this.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hmm.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Soojin, for being my guest on the show, and thank you everyone for listening. I curate a link list column for Sola Network every Friday. Be sure to check that out, and you can also subscribe to it via email. I'll put the link in the show notes. Sola Network publishes fresh content every weekday. Follow on Facebook and Instagram at the Sola Network. In the show notes, you'll find the link to our Sola Network podcast feed, and you can also subscribe on YouTube or Spotify. Just search for Sola Network. Thanks. See you soon.